In this video, I'm going to show you how to automate the import of a CSV file into a database using Linx, and then in the next videos, I will show you how to expose this data on a REST endpoint. Okay, so I've got a CSV file containing some customer data and an empty SQL Server database. And now using Linx, I'm going to automate the import of the customer data from the CSV file into the SQL Server database. So to begin, I'm just going to create a new process to read the file line by line, and this will insert the results into the database and move the file into a backup location. So this process will take a file path as an input, and then next I'm going to read the file which is located at that input. So to do this, I need to add the file plugin, which gives me functionality related to files, and for this particular task I'm going to use the text file read function. And now I can just drag it onto my canvas. I can just reference the input file as the file to read. And then using the built-in field editor, I can load some fields from the file. So I can load them straight from my sample. As you can see, if I indicate that it's got headers, Linx will automatically pick up the headers and create fields from them. And then I can load some sample data just to ensure my field formatting is correct. Now Linx will automatically generate the logical scope of the function, so I can perform functions underneath there that will access each line of the file being read. So now for each line returned from the file, I'm going to insert the data into the database. And I'll have to do that, I first need to add the database plugin. Now for this case, I want to execute queries against a database. So I'm going to use the execute SQL function. Now for the connection properties, I'm going to use the built-in editor to create a connection string. So I can indicate my credentials using the editor, and following this, a connection string will be created by Linx, which I can then use for later. So now a connection string has been made, so now I can copy this out, and I'm going to create a setting from it, which I can access all over my solution in the future. And this just allows me to change environments from one place instead of each function. So now I can just reference that setting, and whatever that setting is, this function will connect to that database. So now next I'm going to generate the SQL to add the file contents of each row to the database table. I can do that using the built-in Object Explorer. I can view the connected database and then auto-generate an insert statement. And then to use variables, I can just drag the variables I want from the Variables Explorer into my query. All the available variables in scope are here, and you can use expressions as well at this level, like in every level. So now to test this out, I'm just going to debug the process. This allows me to just run a simulated version. And I'm just going to add my test path to my CSV that I'm using and add a breakpoint. So now I can step through my process, and this will show me all the values at runtime. So as you can see, the data is read from the file line by line, and the line contents have been passed automatically by Linx. And then the contents of each line are then inserted into the database, and I can just let this run, and we can take a look at the database. And as you see, the first couple of lines of the file have been inserted. So now that we know that the database is working, I'm just going to clear it out again. So we have nothing in the database table. I'm now going to add a condition to check that each customer, if he or she is over 75. Now this is just one way to do this, there's many options. But now I'm going to add a condition that checks if he's over 75, then add the word senior to the name of the customer. So to do this, I can just use a if-else conditional function, and this will allow me to visually create a conditional flow of logic. So I can just add a condition here, and then using the expression editor, I can just reference the available values in scope and then create dynamic expressions at runtime, which will be evaluated. Now this will create a conditional flow. You can see here that there's been a validation error. that the type's incompatible that I'm importing. So I can just go and edit that type again, and I can change the age field to int so that I can perform mathematical expressions more easily with it. So now my validation is okay. And then I'm going to use the set value to set the name of the customer to itself. I'm going to perform an uppercase modification on it and then add the word senior to it. So the name, I just reference it, and the value I'm just going to set to itself, and the values are available here in the editor. And then I'm going to use the built-in string functionality to transform it to all uppercase, and then I'm going to be appending it with the word senior. I can then create a flow for customers under 75 to automatically flow to if I use the else. Instead of adding a new function, I can just copy this current one and then alter the expression. That just allows me to type less configurations and properties. So now, if a customer is over 75, they'll receive senior, and if not, they'll just be uppercase. So now, if I run this process again, you'll see the flow of logic branch depending on the age of the customer, if it's over 75 or under. And I can just let that run, and I'll insert all the records with text modification performed on it. So now I can just take a look at my database. In the customer table, you can see that the customers have been added, and they're all in uppercase with customers over the age of 75 with the text senior at the end of their name. To extend this process, I'm just going to add a file operation which will move the process file into a backup folder when all the file has been completed reading. So once the logic above this function has been executed, only then will the file move. So the file will be the same file that we're reading. And then for the destination path, I'm just going to set it as a root directory in a new processed folder using an expression. I'm not going to link the import file into database process to a timer service, and this timer service will constantly monitor the file directory and execute this process if a file is picked up. So to add a timer service, I can just drag it into the solution, and this can execute every minute, and you can set it at whatever intervals you like. Now in the timer event, every minute it's going to perform a file list on our chosen directory. So our chosen directory can be a setting, which you can make now, root directory. On the Linx server, it's fmydrive. So now in the file list, we can point to that pre-configured directory. Now we're going to loop the results and return the full name of the file, and we're going to search for customer files that are CSV. Right, now for each file picked up, we're going to import that file into the database using our pre-made function, and we can just reference the full path returned from the file list. Now that we're happy with this, we can deploy it to the server where we can activate it and then test it out. So I'm just going to deploy that. On my server, I can take a look at the timer service and just activate it, and now this will run the process and monitor for any files. So on my file drive, I have an empty file. I'm now going to add a copy of the demo customer CSV file, and now the process is going to run every minute, and when it has run, it'll import the file into the database. So you can see I've got an empty database and my file on the drive, and now when the service runs, it'll pick up the demo customers file, import it, and then insert it into the database. As you can see, the file has been imported in SQL, and if I refresh that, the file directory has been created with processed, and the file inside it. On my server, I can then take a look at the files that have been picked up. And that is how you automate the import of a CSV file into a database using Linx. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to retrieve this data from the database and expose this as a REST operation, which can be used to display data on a front end. Join me then.